Hello, you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we talk about films we think might be underrated, underseen, or sometimes, well, we just want to talk about them. I'm your host, Josh Hallam, and I'm joined, as ever, by Alice Oliver. Alice, how you doing? You all right?
I'm very well, thank you, Josh. And yourself?
There.
No, I'm not. I'm just really concentrating really hard. Just looked like I was dozing. I just got my glasses on with those fake eyes. Then you'll never know.
Groucho Marx disguise.
Exactly.
Are you doing all right? You okay, apart from being
I'm very well. Apart from the snoozing.
It is past your bedtime.
It is way past my bedtime, this one. Come on. You're lucky I'm still up.
It's after 7, guys.
I know, man. Struggling here.
Anyway, so we are joined by another fantastic guest. He's a comedian, he's a writer, he's a podcaster, he's loads of things. Carl Donnelly, how are you doing, man? Are you okay?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you too?
Yeah, good. I must say before we start, as with last week, I still have a little bit of a cold, so sorry for the sniffling. I'll soldier on, Alice. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah! What a hero!
I don't like to call in. I don't like to call in sick. Do you know what I mean? And I don't like to reference it either.
No, not at all. Don't like going on about it for 2 weeks on the bounce. Yeah.
Do you remember when I sprained my ankle about 2 years ago?
Oh, and you sent me the pictures. Yeah.
And I've just stopped referencing it. Yeah. Well, 3 hours in A&E was bliss. Anyway, Carl, if you don't know, we always start these episodes with a completely random question. So I'll come to you first, Alice. This is from Fenric Wolf. On Instagram. So hello, Fenric. Thanks for getting in touch.
Fenric.
Or Fenric Wolf might be your full name. I'm not sure. So Fenric Wolf asks, what is the least erotic fruit or vegetable, Alice? Big one, that. It's a big one.
The least erotic. That's difficult. That's difficult because they've all got something to offer. But I suppose if you're just looking at it, I mean...
They've all got something to offer.
They've all got something to offer, and I'll go through them all if you want. But I guess, because obviously pineapple is delicious, but you couldn't look at it in an erotic way due to its shape and its spiky bits on the top, right?
But doesn't it have an erotic use? Pineapple.
No, not really.
Well, no, but isn't there that old wives' tale that
it's like an aphrodisiac? Oh yes,
well,
I know the term.
Apparently, makes your sperm taste better.
Taste good, yeah. No, see, so, now that is erotic. That's pretty erotic. Yeah. Oh God, I don't know if there is any non-erotic fruits because I think obviously kiwi fruits look awful, but they could look like testicles. And then passion fruit is just a big slop in the middle, but nice and squelchy.
Says passion in it.
Passion as well.
Yes,
that is a hard one.
Well, you can rule out, obviously you got to rule out like aubergine. I think we can.
That's a vegetable, isn't it?
It's fruit or vegetable.
Vegetable. If it's got vegetables.
Fucking most of the vegetables, man. Cabbage. Ugh,
so basically, lots of fruits are sexy. No vegetables are sexy.
All the fruits are sexy. This is the new thing. Fuck the M&Ms. It's all about the fruit.
It's all about
sexy
the pineapple.
Fruit.
So,
what about you, Carl? I want to know. I reckon you've got a good answer to this.
I had loads in my head, but now once you said actually, because I think you can't think about them as they're multifunctional, aren't they? I was thinking of a big watermelon has nothing to offer, but the moment you open it, it's a juicy thing, isn't it? It's like a lychee from the outside looks like a little dragon's egg. But a lychee, you open it, and it's one of the sexiest things I've ever seen.
Just in a Chinese restaurant after your meal. Oh, got any lychees?
So I don't know. I think it's actually a very hard question. I'd probably go for a root vegetable. Just a
root vegetable.
Potato. I can't. I find it hard to believe somebody's going to find a potato sexy.
I don't know.
Chips are good.
Chips are
good.
I've spent many a night in the chippy.
See, I suppose. It's horses for courses, isn't it?
I think generally just vegetables are less erotic than the fruits.
Yes.
So I don't even think there is a fruit. They're all beautiful.
Asparagus. That makes your wee smell
smelly wee, innit?
Different.
Stinks.
Yeah.
What about you,
suppose
Joe?
anything of that shape you could essentially ram up your bum.
That's the thing,
let's be honest.
You can make anything erotic if you try hard enough.
I've always said that. Anything's a dildo if you try hard enough.
Clip that. What would I say? So I saw the question. Pardon the phrase, but I saw the question come in, and I would say peas. Peas aren't erotic.
That's quite
You
true.
can't. There's no way of eating peas in a sexy way.
That's absolutely
because even
accurate.
put corn on the cob, you can make that sexy, dripping in butter and all that sort of stuff, or marge or whatever. But peas, they're gonna fall off your fork.
Yes.
You know what I mean? If you're on a first date and you're looking over and you're like, I can't have peas here.
Yeah.
Especially because
has no one ever mooted the idea of sucking them up through a straw? Has that ever been suggested as a way of eating peas?
Kind of what bubble tea is, isn't it? I mean, they did it with that. I'm sure they could do it with the peas.
Food have a special bit of cutlery, don't they? Like you get a sort of like a ramen spoon. I'm thinking like a pea straw.
A pea straw. So it's just like, hey mate, have you got any pea straw? Just over there by the ketchup, mate. With the ketchup, I'll just. So I'd say peas, but then I've also only just recently. My partner takes the piss out of me all the time. I only recently learned the best way to eat peas.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
so from being a kid, I might have already told you this, Alex. I was a scooper.
Right.
And I never realised you went like that, side on
the side,
and knifed them onto the fork.
Right.
I was a scooper, so they would always fall off my fork. So maybe that's why I'm saying peas. Yeah. So anyway, peas is my answer. So
I think that's a good shout.
Yeah. So you saying peas as well, Alice?
I'll join you over there with the peas.
So are we saying unanimously peas aren't sexy?
Yes.
Peas are not sexy.
Right. We're gonna get letters. Letters from the pea people. Big green giant.
Big P.
No, he's sweet corn, isn't he? Yeah, I'm taking down Big P.
Yeah.
Okay then, so we will move on to talking about this week's film then, which is Major League from 1989. So if you've not seen it, spoiler warnings for that. Carl, you picked this one, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what it's about and then why you picked it?
Right. Well, it's a classic sports sort of rites of passage film. It's a lovely, heartwarming story of some underdogs done well. It has aged somewhat badly. It's about a team that were formerly known as the Cleveland Indians, a baseball team. And they've recently, in the last 2 years, due to growing pressure, have changed their names to the Cleveland Guardians. Right. I think after about a 35, 40-year protest, they finally realised that maybe we should.
They wore them down.
Yeah. It's like the Red Sox and all that. Yeah, there's that weird thing in. Yeah, American sports has recently started to address that. But anyway, the thing is, this film is basically about a team, baseball team. They're pretty low down the league. They get the owner dies, and his very wealthy and horrible wife takes over as the sort of owner, and she has an idea of making the team go so bad that they can up sticks and move to Miami because she's been offered a deal to move the team. Because in America they do that weird thing where you can move a team.
Yeah.
A team suddenly just moves state. So she's been offered a move to Miami, but the only way she can contractually do it is if the attendance to the stadium drops below a certain level. And to do that, she basically puts together the worst team she can. She convinces her general manager basically to just get on board, and they just buy all the worst players they can think of. And then the team finds out, and then it brings them together, and they go on a run right up to the World Series final. So it is a lovely story. But yeah, I will say that it's a film that I loved when I was a kid. Watched it all the time, and then I now watch it once a year.
Do you?
I've actually got a tradition at the Edinburgh Fringe of watching it with comedians John Hastings and Jimmy McGee.
All right.
And but every year I watch it, it does show up a new problematic area of the film. Like it's really there is some issues now that I'm like, ooh. But I'm so in love with it from childhood that I can't let it go.
Oh yeah, we're all guilty of that.
Yeah, we've all got those films. We've even done some on
that
this podcast.
Era as well. I will say that era of sort of knockabout comedies. There was a lot of that going on. Have you ever seen Soul Man? The famous
no, I don't think I have.
Comedy, C. Thomas Howell comedy. It's brilliant, but the story is unbelievable. It's about a guy. Do you know what it is?
Blackface?
It is blackface. But I don't know, I said that as if like, I'm going to go, but I sort of am. But like, because it isn't like, he doesn't, I mean, it was not, it's got a real like, the idea of the film and what they're trying to say is actually very progressive. It's about a very wealthy, privileged white kid whose parents decide to give him a start in life and not give him that ego of a privilege. They decide to not pay his tuition fees to Harvard Law School. So what he does, and this is the bit that is bad, he finds out that there is a scholarship going for the most gifted black student from his area. Oh. So what he does was he has a friend who works at a medical laboratory that are doing some tests with very strong tanning tablets.
Oh my goodness.
And he overdoses on the tablets to the point where his skin turns a dark enough beige that he can pass as a black boy. And he gets the scholarship and he lives as a black guy at the University of Harvard. And while there, he encounters so much racism that it makes him realise what he's done and what he's done wrong and how privileged he is and how horrible black students have it at Harvard. And, you know, it's actually, fundamentally what they're saying is good, but the way they do it is problematic. And I think a lot of Major League does that as well. It's that era where, like, you know, I think they've got good intentions, but you're like, oh, but now it doesn't really work.
So in terms of why you picked it then, do you think it's underrated or underseen, or do you just want to talk about it?
Well, I do think it's underrated. I think it's a really funny film with certain actors doing some of their best comedy work. Like Wesley Snipes is in it, and it was a very early Wesley Snipes film, and he's really funny in it. He shows that sort of charisma that turned him into being quite, a massive Hollywood film star before it all went a bit wrong. Like it's Charlie Sheen at his absolute peak. That sort of, it was a couple of years after Platoon, where he'd suddenly established himself not just as this young, good-looking guy, he could act as well. It's got Tom Berenger in it. It's got a really good cast. One of the problematic characters is a Cuban exile who is played by the guy who went on to play the president in 24.
Dennis Hayes, but
and he plays a Cuban who does voodoo, and that's an issue. Some of the language around that, but yeah, it's got loads of good actors in it, and like it's just a really good cast, and everyone really, I think, nails it. It's very funny.
Okay. Alice, had you seen this one before? Had you heard of this one?
Had not seen it, had not heard of it. I could have hazarded a guess that it was going to be about baseball, and I was correct. But no, not seen, not heard, so already possibly underseen. What about you, Josh? I reckon you probably hadn't seen this.
I'd heard of it, but hadn't seen it.
You've heard of it, okay.
Yeah, I think I'd heard of it I think I'd heard it referenced in conversations around probably around Charlie Sheen or late 80s films, or one of those ones I've seen referenced in wider things. But I had not seen it, no, and I, like you, guessed it was about baseball, because when I say I'd heard it, I think I'd heard of the title, and not much more. So, well, let's get stuck into it then. So we'll come to you first, Alice. What did you think overall?
So I didn't love it.
Okay.
But I think, but I've been really interested about this because I really want to hear what Carl has to say and hear your perspective on it, because obviously, like you say, you saw it when you were young, and that has such a profound effect on people and their love of films. Like, we talk about it all the time. Some of our favourite films that we've done on the podcast are ones that we were just obsessed with when we were kids. And it's hard to let go of that. But for me, I felt like maybe I wasn't the intended audience, and I struggled to get myself in the mindset of the intended audience. And I think maybe like a lot of it, I just didn't get it. And it just kind of went over my head. But there were things in there that I did enjoy and that I did appreciate. So I'll touch on some of those now. So I love the concept and I love the story. So it's the underdogs making it against all the odds, right? And then you've got the villain who's trying to break their spirit. And I really love her character. So Rachel Phelps is the widow who's taken over the team. She's like this no-nonsense kind of gal trying to make it in a man's world. And she's mean and she's ruthless. But I thought she was great. And I thought she was really entertaining every time she was on screen. I love that it's set in Cleveland. Like, so many films, it's New York, or San Francisco, LA. It's like, no, we're going to do this in Cleveland. So that's always a joy to see a different landscape and see, other places represented on the screen. And some of it I did find really funny. So there's a bit where they've got to do an American Express advert. So they're doing an ad for American Express and they're sort of acting it out and reading their lines and stuff. That was really funny. That was like some real like deep like satire going on, which I really enjoyed about like commercialization of sports and all that. So that was good. You also get these little snippets throughout of like fan reaction when they hear a piece of news about the team. So we move away from like the main thread of the narrative and from the main characters. And you see these guys like in a diner talking about the team, or you see these guys on a construction site talking about the team. And I really enjoyed those and I thought they were entertaining. And the fucking janitor from Scrubs was in there. And I was like, oh my God, there he is, looking about 20 years, 30 years younger, whatever it is now. And the other thing that I really enjoyed and found really entertaining was the commentator. So the guy who's commentating on all the matches.
And he's a real commentator, a real famous commentator.
I thought he was because the
Bobby
voice.
Euchre, I believe his name.
Oh, so he's huge then. He's huge in America, isn't he? And he was great, and he's just this overt alcoholic, and he's just kind of like just doing what he wants and says what he wants all the time. And every time he was on screen, I felt like I could really feel the energy of the film like really lift, and I just found him so entertaining. There were a couple more things as well, but I'll slow down a little bit now. Carl, what are some of your favourite things about this? Like weirdly,
I do think the style of it is very interesting. It's not a standard just sports film, or even it's not even like made as a standard sort of late 80s comedy. That thing you say where it does cut, it has these weird intermissions of almost musical intermission, and then there's cuts to the fans talking, and you watch the rise of them and the mood of the city change over the film, and it cuts back to almost give you a little commentary from the people that live there. And it's a really lovely way. I think it's a really lovely little tool that they use. And because it was directed by the guy who did The Sting. Do you know The Sting? It's great. It's a brilliant film. And a really stylized, music's used really well in that. And I think it shows in this. I think after this, he sort of went a bit more, it's weird to say mainstream, after just a major league. But yeah, I think stylistically, I've always loved that. And I feel like that thing of it, you do get a sense of Cleveland. Because again, I watched it as a kid who, I didn't know anything about baseball. And the only thing I knew about America was from films, and again, like you say, it was all New York, or some weird big forest area you'd see in another film, or Los Angeles, Hollywood, like Beverly Hills Cop type stuff. And so to see just an industrial sort of run-down working class part of America was actually quite refreshing. And cast-wise, I just think the cast is excellent. I do have quite a major Charlie Sheen soft spot in terms of his acting and that period, not his, I think he has somewhat tarnished his reputation over the years, but there was a hot period, when he literally started as that little sort of cameo in Ferris Bueller's Day Off was probably where I first saw him, and then that little late 80s Platoon, he did that weird film, The Wraith. I remember loving
Wall
that.
Street.
That was like his first solo. Then Wall Street, and then he had this sort of 6-7 year hot streak of doing some real seminal, films of that time. So I loved him. I always loved Tom Berenger. I thought he was brilliant. He's just a quality, good old fashioned actor, isn't he?
It's a great cast, isn't it? It is.
It's funny, and there's the Dawn, who's I've forgotten the actor who plays Dawn, who's like the. Someone who's sort of made his money, he's given up caring and just basically is waiting to retire.
Corbin Benson.
Yes. And all he wants to do is play golf. And it's a great character to have, a bloke who's just like, he's been a professional baseball player, made loads of money, he's wealthy.
Doesn't want to get injured.
He just can't be arsed. And and whereas you got these and these hungry young players, I just think it's a really lovely dynamic for a film of all the best sports films have that, motley crew, group of people that are better than the sum of their parts. So I think, and I think in this really works for that, because they nailed every bit of casting essentially. That really sweaty old pitcher, I've forgotten his name. Sorry, the guy who plays the other pitcher.
The guy he's very Christian, and he has
he's just a sweaty old end of career guy.
Yeah, I can't remember the actor's name. I think he's called Vaughn. I think the character's
he's great. He's been in loads. He's always pops up in stuff, that guy as well. But I just remember just loving everything about it, and it does have that great climax of, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it in the last 4 years since it came out. But there is a scene at the end when Charlie Sheen is introduced to the field when he wasn't meant to be playing, and that scene still almost makes me cry with excitement, because it just captures how I remember seeing it when I was a kid, and they start singing Wild Thing, and it's like, and I watched it because I've probably not watched it now in a couple of years, probably about 2 years, I think, since last time I watched it, and I watched it last night. And I still just love it. And that scene comes on, and I just feel like I get tears in my eyes.
Oh, wow. So it's definitely. So do you think nostalgia's doing a lot of the heavy lifting, or do you think you still find a lot of stuff?
Loads of heavy, and so much heavy lifting.
Yeah, but
it is ultimately just a knockabout comedy, sports film.
It is, but I think there's a lot to like in there. I think, like you said, the cast are great, but not only the cast are great. I think, and I'll come on to this in a little bit as well. There's some really good stuff they do with genre, but also the cast all have their little moment to shine. So not many, for quite often sports films, they don't balance all the sort of lesser plot lines as well. Whereas this, like you say, you've got a couple of key characters. One who's a player who just wants to retire, so doesn't want to get injured, can't be bothered. Another one who is really concerned with what he's going to do after he retires, so he's sort of now seeking a woman who left him, or he left.
Oh, and Rene Russo is excellent in it as well.
Russo is great in it. Then you've got, like you say, younger players played by younger actors who then went on to be big stars, like Wesley Snipes and Charlie Sheen. So I really enjoyed it. Did it remind you of The Replacements, Alice?
Massively. That's one of my main notes, is how much it reminded me of The Replacements.
What's The Replacements?
So, let me tell you about The Replacements.
God.
So, Keanu Reeves and Gene Hackman, Andrea Evans, Jon Favreau, a few other guys, Orlando Jones. So, it is about an American football team. The American football players, loads of them have gone on strike, basically. Right. So they've got to bring scabs in to play the games. So they bring in all these. So they bring in all these scabs. Late. I think bang on 2000, possibly.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, so they bring in these scabs. The scabs are, this ragtag group of guys. Some of them are has-beens, some of them never were, like working in diners, some of them in prison, all this stuff. They come together and they're doing shit, and they're terrible on the field, and they're throwing up on the field and beating each other up, and it's all bad. But then they claw their way to victory, and it's amazing. And then Heroes by David Bowie plays at the end, and they win the match.
I'd cry so hard.
Oh my God.
But it is just this film, but American football.
It's super similar.
It's the same
down
film.
to the way, because when they're talking about the different baseball players that they're going to get in to make up this team, this new team, the way that we sort of see the players in their life, what they're doing now. Oh, so Charlie Sheen's in prison, this guy's working here, that guy's retired, whatever. And then when they start arriving at the field, and you've got the coaches there to sort of welcome them, and they go, oh, that's this guy, he did this, and he was like this, and he was like that. And it's almost frame for frame.
Oh, really?
Like The Replacements. You definitely feel like The Replacements has taken a lot of inspiration from this, I reckon. But I enjoyed that part of it as well, and that's really fun. And then you've got Charlie Sheen's character, Vaughan, isn't it?
Rick Vaughan.
Rick Vaughan.
That's who Vaughan is. I said it was the old picture. I can't remember the old pictures.
And he turns up on the back of someone's motorbike with a bin bag of stuff.
There's a line where he says that. He gets out and he starts walking down. So obviously he's got the jagged hairline, and he's got earrings, and he's got the ripped sleeves off. And there's a bit where one of the coaches just goes in this really gruff voice. He goes, "Look at this fucking guy," like that.
Yeah.
And that is a line that me and my friends quote. Like so often, like me, Jimmy McGee, John Hastings, whenever we're together, if somebody walks nearby who has anything interesting going on in their look, one of us will just go, "Look at this fucking guy," and the other two will just laugh. It's a real, it's really seeped into our sort of how we speak to each other, our lexicon.
Proper high school, that, innit? Yeah. Oh, haircut.
But I also love that Charlie Sheen's an ex-con, and he's meant to be this real naughty one. And essentially all he's got is an earring and no sleeves on his shirt. He's actually really nice.
Yeah. What I like about that bit is that Wesley Snipes' character just turns up.
Yeah.
No.
Do we ever find out why he turned up? He's like, you weren't invited. Yeah. And he's just
trying to blag his way in.
Carry him out on the
does
bed
whatever he wants.
Willie Mays Hayes, yeah. Because there are 2 sequels to this, aren't there?
Yeah, and I've only ever seen number 2, and it is not good.
Oh, is it not? And then the third one's
really?
like got no one in it, or it's like it's got just Dennis Haysbert in it, or something like that, and it's not. Yeah. Whereas the second one has got all of the. So it spawned a franchise, the Major League Cinematic Universe. So anything else, Alex? Anything else you particularly liked about it?
No, that was going to be my final point. Was all about the replacements connections, and I reckon, Carl, It's not often that I would ever recommend the replacements to anyone because, again, I know a lot of the nostalgia for me is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but I reckon you might love the replacements.
I do think a sports film is like my guilty pleasure, no matter how bad it is, or not bad. I mean, but a lot of them are just sort of fine. Coach Carter, something like Any Given Sunday. Any Given Sunday is not that good a film, but I watch it, and by the end, I'm just like, I don't even know anything about American football. I'm just crying. And I don't know what it is. There's something about it's like sports documentaries. I love them as well, even if I don't know anything about the person involved or the sport. So I think this. I was
like that with I put Free Solo on. Have you seen Free Solo? Have you seen that, Alice?
I haven't. No, who's that about?
It's a guy who's a free climber. And and you watch it and you're like, this guy's mad.
He's also really annoying as well. It's a party who's like, I don't think he absolutely falls, if I'm honest.
And then towards the end, you're like, go on, get up the mountain. And you think you become an expert in climbing, you're like, oh, he almost slipped on that jagged edge.
But I would say, in terms of loving sport films and this style of film, this would probably be the origin story of that. I would say watching this when I was 7 or 8. Well, I was born in 82, it came out in 89. I reckon I did see it when it came out, not at the cinema, but when it first hit the video. Because at the time I was living next to a video shop. And basically my parents, wasn't the most responsible parenting, but they had a deal with the guy who owned the shop that I could just go and hire any film I wanted, no matter what age rating, which was great because I had an older brother, so I was already watching a lot of adult. I got into horror when I was about 9 because I got to watch all the great horrors. So I used to just go and hire just countless films over the weekend, and so I remember I would have probably seen this in like 90 when I was 8, and I reckon this was like the seed was sown that I will cry at every single sports film ever released. Yeah.
But like you said, there's something. Thing is with sports films, a lot of them are really formulaic, but the formula is successful for a reason. Mm-hmm. And I think that's definitely at play here. So for me, I thought it did what I thought it did a good job of was it balances it being a comedy and being a sports film at the same time. So you have a lot of good comedy moments in there, but which with the feel good side of a comedy, but then you also have some really good tension building and some good triumphant moments as well. So you almost get double feel good because both genres have that feel good element. And I think that's definitely got to be, that really lends itself to nostalgia, that triumphant feeling of a sports film and the feel good nature of a comedy. And I also like back to what you guys were saying about the sports fans. I thought, I've never been to a baseball game, but I've been to other sports. And I thought it captured the feeling of being in a stadium quite well. That idea of being stood around, and because quite often when you watch sports films, if you see the fans, it's like playing FIFA. They're all just staring straight forward, going yay. Whereas if you've actually been to a football game or a rugby game, people do talk. You'll be in a game and they'll be like, he's fucking shit, isn't he? Like talking to people. Like I was at a game the other week. I went to it. I went to a football game the other day because my mate had a spare ticket, and the guy went, "Oh, referee, you bald bastard!" And the guy in front of him was bald, and he went, "Sorry, mate," like that, straight out of the gate without even flinching. "You bald bastard, sorry, mate. It's not personal." Like that sort of thing.
Not personal.
But in this, they do have that thing of everyone talking, and then that filters in back to what you were saying earlier, Carl, about like how what it does is it tracks the progression of the team through the fans, not only in the stadium but in the city. So it's almost like it's all rolled into one identity. So you get people that start being like, "Oh, they're rubbish," and then they're a bit better, and then "Oh, I love them," like at the end or whatever. So I really like that, and like you say, it is formulaic, but I think it's a winning formula for a reason. As I say, in terms of genre, I thought it did really well to balance the two. I enjoyed lots of the different gags. Like there's a really good visual gag with the plane that they've got to one of their games where they're like, "Oh, that's the plane," and this absolutely awful plane comes into shot. I also thought it did. I don't know what you'll reckon about this, Alex, because I know one of our big things, one of our big bugbears is a film overly spoon feeding you. Whereas I think this does a good job of showing them getting better and why they needed to get better and why they were bad and all that sort of stuff, without being too obvious about it.
And without talking about it all the time, without that being the main thing. Yeah, totally.
And there's nice little bits, like it turns out like Charlie just needs glasses. Little things like there's funny little things where you're like, oh, that's another way of doing it. Like, just, I think it's there's not too much. It's not too much in the stadium though either. That's what I like as well. It is intermittent.
Yeah, and it does cover all of their sort of personal stories as well as them being on the pitch as well. So is there anything else you particularly like about it, Carl, or is it all nostalgia and all that it's a good comedy and all that?
Yeah, I genuinely think it is just, it was, I just saw it at the right time to, as a young boy, seeing a bunch of funny men playing a sport I didn't know. There's some funny swearing in it. Like just bits. I remember there's a really funny line. Charlie Sheen delivers some amazing lines in it. There's one when they go for dinner at a swanky restaurant. There's a lovely visual little joke there as well. You clearly have to wear a tie to the restaurant. And Charlie Sheen's wearing a vest and like a cut-off thing, sleeping, and he's just got a tie wrapped around his neck. And he says, I feel like a lawyer dressed like this. It's just a really funny visual joke. And but then they're talking about when Tom Berenger spots Rene Russo, and it's his ex-wife. And who's that guy he's with? And just very deadpan, Charlie Sheen goes, "Do you want me to take side?" and beat the shit out of him. And I don't know why. The delivery of that line, he throws it away so casually that it's a really there's so many of those moments. There's some funny slapstick bits, like the old pitcher getting in the head of the bat after he drinks the rum. There's a lot of funny. The bit with the what's his name? Something Gammon, the actor who plays the coach. Grizzly, that guy. That's where he just pisses on.
Oh yeah,
but he just takes the contract off Dawn and pisses on it in front of it, and it's just the way he does it so calmly and casually. I think I think the comedy in it really appealed to me when I was a kid. It is quite silly and it's not trying to be clever or anything. It's just I do, like you say, I actually do think that it's a funny 80s comedy, but it also has a very nice bit of pathos and a good sports film at the same time. It's got a lot going for it, I think so, and it also doesn't a lot of sports comedies fall into the realm of doing is going, let's go overly wacky with it. And they don't do that in this. I think what they do is they go, let's give them all a little something, but they don't overdo it. So like you say, Charlie Sheen is like he's a bit of a nutter. He's been in fights, but he's not. That's all he is. He's not one note. Same as with Wesley Snipes. He's sort of brash and he's cocky, but that's not all he is. And I think there are other films. To be honest, the first one that comes to mind, because we mentioned it now, is The Replacements. Sorry, Alice. Where there are characters, it's like, oh, that guy's there's a character in The Replacements that's literally like, that guy's the Welsh guy. Or like, what's... Yeah.
Or like,
he's
what
wiry.
that guy...
He's talking, his crazy fans and he's wiry.
But yeah, I think there's lots to like in there. Okay, then, so let's talk about things that we perhaps didn't like about the film or that we change about the film. Now, Alice, this is steeped in nostalgia for Carl, so I hope you're not going to break his heart too much like I did when you came on to talk about The Replacements.
I know.
So what didn't you like? Because I think there's a few bits you've mentioned there. Is there anything massive?
So, Carl, I just want to let you know that the one of the things that we try to do on this is to sort of be balanced about things.
Yes.
And especially when we have a guest on, like, we're so happy you're here. Thank you so much for coming on. I don't want to shit all over your film. I really, really don't. And I'm not, I don't get any joy out of doing that. But I also need to be honest at the same time.
Yes.
If you know what I mean. But you might be able to kind of help me along with some of these points, and you might be able to go, oh, well, actually, did you think about it this way? And I'll go, oh, no, I didn't. Thank you, Carl. Now I understand what's happening. So, ultimately, for me, I just didn't find it funny enough for a comedy, and it wasn't exciting enough for a sports film. So for me, the comedy felt like it wasn't written by experienced comedy writers. And due to the script and the delivery, a lot of the time I didn't know if I was supposed to take something as a joke or if it was being serious. And it just felt like a lot of the jokes fell flat and maybe went a bit over my head. So I'm going to take, for example, the relationship between Jake and Lynn. So Jake is kind of the main character. It is a bit of an ensemble, but he is quite prominent in it because he was this like hero baseball player back in the day. His ex-girlfriend is a woman called Lynn. So he is grossly inappropriate towards her. He gets right up in her space when she asks him not to. He cheated on her and then fucked off for 3 years, and now he's demanding her time again. He turns up at her work, he turns up at her house, and she asks him multiple times to leave her alone. He doesn't. He eventually wears her down and she has sex with him even though she's engaged to another man. So is that whole thing a joke? Like, is it sort of poking fun at how in most sports films the main character will always get the girl and it doesn't matter
I don't think
how
they meant that
bad
as a
he
joke
is?
at all. I think
Right.
they meant that as a true romance story.
Do you think, right, so then I'm not into it. And I'm not into it.
I do think, you know, the 80s were different times. And,
yeah, of course,
all
of course.
All you had to do was keep asking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, that is, I would agree. Like in the things that I think have dated quite badly, I think his refusal to accept that she is now in a new relationship and due to get married in a handful of months. That is probably one of the things. I'd say it's one of the lesser crimes, I think, in the film, if I'm honest.
For sure. But with the other things...
there's issues. I do think there's parts of it that are dated, and I think I was going to say some of the gender stuff in it, you know, would... But actually, you know, like there are some that the head, what is it, the director or the owner of the club.
Yeah,
she's
owner,
a very like cool, powerful woman. I think
great.
Dawn's wife is
her,
super cool. Like that, Dawn's wife, the moment she finds out he's been cheating, just goes and bangs Charlie Sheen, uses him and just tells him literally as she's leaving what she's done, and then goes and just tells him really sly in his ear. Like I actually think all the actual female characters on the whole are pretty well, you know, grounded and sort of, but I do think, that relationship does feel somewhat toxic.
It was a little bit, and it was just because, like, if it had been this sort of, oh, you know, she's actually really happy to see him again, and secretly she's really in love with him, but she doesn't want to let herself. But she asked him to go away so many times, and I think if she hadn't done that,
was happy to see him. I did want to get back together, but
that's what I got from it.
I did, but I do think they've probably done that slightly better, I think.
I mean, but yeah, like you say, product of its time, it's fine. But I literally couldn't tell. I was like, is that meant to be is it a joke? Is this part of the comedy? Am I reading too much into it, or is it just a bit of a shitty situation?
I don't think it's a meta take on toxic relationships in Hollywood. It's a bit. If anything, I'm happy that you gave it that much credit.
Yeah, no, you just don't know. You know,
it's a bit early Bond.
Yeah, it's exactly that.
No, Mr. Bond until because one thing I noticed is like. What I took from it, and this might be, you know, male gaze or whatever, you know, whatever you want to call it, that is similar to Carl. Like, actually, she was fighting the urge herself. But what I did notice that is when they did get back together, not once does he apologise.
No,
like there's I was a prick. He shows no remorse. It's just I want you back, so then they get back together. So if they did want to improve on that, you could have. I'm really sorry, I was a bit of a shit, but now I'm not, and I really want you back. That might have sweetened it a little bit for you, Alice. I don't know, but
there is one bit where they discuss, and he talks about how he's changed, and I do think there's a little conversation.
He's Red Moby Dick.
He's Red Moby Dick. Yeah, you know, he's trying to impress her.
Come on, he's a sportsman. He's not, he's built on different stuff.
Exactly. I'll try and let him off. So I felt like personally that the excitement around the sport itself really struggled to build momentum throughout the film, and then a lot of the scenes of them playing were quite repetitive. And I appreciate that it's difficult in this instance because they're a terrible team of terrible athletes. So how do you build the pace? How do you make it exciting? I don't know, right? But then and you already touched on the moment now, but the moment when the crowd are singing Wild Thing about Vaughn, that bit is so brilliant that for me, it really just highlighted how not excited I was about everything else. So like when that bit happened, I was like, oh, this is sick. Yeah, more of this Wild Thing. Like, this is cool as hell. But then I was like, but where was that energy before? all the rest of the way.
I see
so
that.
I just needed a little bit more.
But do you think that part of that is down to the fact that baseball is an incredibly boring sport?
But maybe
like,
that's
it's so repetitive.
Maybe that's
like
it.
The season
yeah.
isn't like normal seasons where you play each team twice or something. Like they just constantly play each other, and it's really boring. The sport, like that's why everyone says, "Oh, you should go to a baseball game," and you're in America because you just sit there for 4 hours and eat hot dogs and talk. You're hardly watching it because it's just happening in the background. So I do actually think there's something about the sport that doesn't lend itself. Like you look at something like Moneyball. Moneyball is a brilliant film, but I don't think the baseball part is a big, good part of it. It's almost like that's secondary, isn't it? Like, I don't think they portray the sport of baseball as if it's an exciting sport. So weirdly, I would defend that in the sense of saying it's not an exciting sport. It's very hard to make exciting. So it's actually just that they probably just went, let's just show it, clip to it, show they're doing well, and at the end have a really exciting scene with with Charlie Sheen's character and then Tom Berenger's character and Willie Mays Hayes.
Is there anything that have you watched it again yesterday or was it? Did you say yesterday or this morning or
last night? I watched
last night.
It.
So is there anything that you don't like about it? Obviously, you've touched on there that some of the stuff has come on, and every time you watch it, it's a bit more problematic.
I think that's it. I really like. I've never ever had an issue with any of the casting, the way it's made. I really love the direction of it, and I love the music in it. It's sort of weird. It does make you. It feels like baseball music. I don't even know what that means. Like it just feels like it's something you'd hear in that American baseball town.
Yeah.
But my only issues are always every time I watch it, I find a new thing that makes me go like, ooh, just little moments of.
What was it this time?
There was one. Oh, what was it? Oh man, I think it might have actually just been the delivery of the line when they ask what religion Serrano is.
Oh, yeah.
He goes voodoo, and I'm like, oh no. So there's a few bits like that, but yeah, it's I think the little problematic elements that are of their time. There's something that they wouldn't happen now. I would hope and imagine, but other than that, I'm still, after watching it last night, I'm still confident that it's a really good film that I'm glad I like, and I think more people should watch it who might have been a little bit too young to watch it then.
Okay, so we'll move on then to talking about the critical reception then, and we'll see if it is underrated, underseen, etc. Alice, you've not seen the critical reception?
I have not. I've managed to avoid it.
Okay, Carl, have you seen it?
I've not. I don't have an idea at all about how it was received. I imagine it was probably
exciting.
I don't imagine it was a critical smash. If I'm gonna,
Right. So at the time, I'm just gonna double check these scores because you'll see why.
Oh, interesting. Well, I'll in the interim, I'll do some guessing. So I reckon it maybe got I think maybe a 6. I was going to say maybe a low 6, but I think maybe just bang on 6.
What are we talking about? IMDb score?
So 6 IMDb or 60% Rotten Tomatoes, and then we sort of assess the two of them, the critics and the audience, on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. No, what I have checked
6
is right.
sounds about right.
What I have checked is right. So do you know what? I'll leave that in because we've never actually had to recheck the scores before based on what we've discussed. So what did you both say? Then what did you both reckon it got? What did you think, Atlas? About 6.
So I think I'm going to go with 6 bang on, but I personally would maybe give it a little bit less than that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. It's probably a 6, and I would give it a higher score. Surprisingly.
Okay, so at the time of recording on IMDb, it gets 7.2 out of 10 or 72%. Okay. And then this is why I had to Google it. Rotten Tomatoes, the critics give it 83%.
Yes.
Wow.
And the audience give it 84%.
Oh my god! What am I missing?
So
what am I missing?
It averages
I don't
out.
Get it.
Averages out.
It was
79.
a meta take on toxic masculinity.
Says here,
you were right all along.
Yeah, it says here, a great toxic take on masculinity. No, so it averages out at 79% or just under 8 out of 10.
Wow.
So.
Well,
I didn't get any box office figures, but in terms of rating, I would say for me, that's about right.
got 2 sequels as well, so it must have done. I think
I remember it being a very popular film.
Yeah,
you know, everyone I knew saw it. You know, but
see,
that's not how you base popularity. I suppose.
It is.
It was massive in Southwest London, guys.
So there you go.
I would say that's about appropriately rated based on what I thought of it. I'm guessing you think that's overrated, Alice.
I do. Yeah, I do think that's overrated for me. It's overrated for me. But clearly, given those scores, given what you've both said, I'm missing something. I'm missing the thing that makes it magical. So that's fine. That's my problem. That's fine.
What do you reckon, Carl? Is that appropriately rated? Is it underrated?
I'm happy with that. I think, you know, I'm not somebody who's going to lie and say it's the best film ever made or anything, you know, but I really love it from nostalgic reasons. But every time I watch it, I do also have those moments where I think this is actually a really well made film, good cast. Good ensemble piece, and I find it very funny. So I think it ticks all the boxes to be a well above average sports comedy.
Yeah, and in terms of it being underseen, I think you could make an argument that, okay, we haven't looked at the box office, so perhaps it seems to have been fairly successful. Like you said, it got multiple sequels, but there's probably an argument to be made that people aren't going back and watching it now, maybe.
Yeah.
So people aren't seeking it out.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy to find.
No, exactly. It's not on any streaming site.
No.
Do you think is that though because of the name of the club?
I thought that. I wonder if that's sort of kind of tarnished it a little bit.
Is it also because of some of the other racial elements in the film?
Just on a very surface level look, it was made for $11 million and it grossed $75 million. So I think it did quite well financially.
That's pretty well. That's pretty good, isn't it? That's pretty good.
Yeah. So I'd say it wasn't underrated at the time, but I think it has sort of been forgotten.
Yeah, I think that's a fair. I think that's
by generations since.
I think that's a fair shout. We should see. I think more people should more people seek this out, Carl.
Absolutely. If you like a sports like film that is uplifting but also funny, then absolutely, you know, this is the film that Moneyball wanted to be.
Let's put that on the streaming site if it goes back on. The film that Moneyball wanted to be.
It wishes it was.
This Moneyball's got nothing on this, Carl Donnelly.
Yeah.
Well, brilliant. Thank you very much for coming on, Carl.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been nice to reminisce.
So where can the guys at home, people listening, where can they look out for your stuff? What have you got going on?
Well, I'm always gigging around the place, and I'm still just sort of sorted my website. Well, I'm starting the process of sorting my website out because I lost control of my website last summer. I was a very busy period. I missed the emails about renewing my domain for 3 months. I missed those emails, and then somebody else I think snapped it up. So I've basically had to redo my website, and it's in the process. So gig wise, just go to Instagram or Twitter or whatever, and you can find stuff there. That's at Carl Donnelly, and I do a podcast around weekly. It tends to be weekly, but sort of we're both quite, you know, we've got families and things, so sometimes it does drift into like 8-10 days. But it's called TVI with a comedian called Julian Dean, and it's a very dumb, just weekly chat with a guest. There's no theme or purpose at all. It is just we literally walk into the studio with no prep, and we just start talking, and then hope that it's funny for the period of time we're talking.
We could try that, Alice, but I don't think we'd get very far.
I'm definitely not funny enough, mate.
Have you watched the film? Nah, couldn't be bothered. Brilliant. So we'll make sure that we put everything in the episode description and post things about your podcast and all that. And if your website gets up and running, we'll bang that out as well. Thanks very much for coming on, man. It's been really nice to chat.
It's been really fun.
So yeah, thank you very much for Carl for coming on. Check out the episode links for all this stuff there, and do check him out. You will not regret it. We'll be back next week, won't we, Alice?
We will indeed. How very exciting.
We'll be back with another episode, another film to talk about. If you'd like to get in touch with us, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're all the social medias. If you just search for Just Films and That on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, you'll find us. We're always putting stuff out there. Get in touch. If you want to suggest a film, then suggest away and we'll add it to the list. We're also on Patreon as well. If you're interested in a little bit of bonus stuff, extended episodes a day early, a few other bits and bobs, get over to patreon.com/justfilmsandthat. And any support you can give us is massively appreciated. We're also on the television, aren't we, Alice?
We are indeed. Me and Josh are on the local TV network every Friday from 6 p.m. talking about all our favourite underrated and underseen films. So if you live in Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, Liverpool or the north east of England, you can find us on Channel 8 on Freeview. Or if you live in North Wales or South Wales, you can find us on Channel 8 on Freeview. We're also on Daily Motion because I've started uploading the episodes to Daily Motion, guys, if you know what that is. So if you search just films and that on there, you can see what it is exactly that we're doing. How do you make a podcast go on TV? I don't know, but we did it. I found a way, and the videos are there for your viewing pleasure.
Oh, there you go. How'd you do it? Well, we sort of make it up as we go along, really.
That's exactly it.
Thank you very much for tuning in this week. The fact that you listen is massively appreciated. Thanks again to Carl, and we'll be back next week. It's goodbye from me. Cheerio.
Bye.